Joining me now is the 43rd Premier of New South Wales and Minister for Western Sydney, Barry O'Farrell. Mr Premier, welcome and congratulations.
Thank you. Always happy to be here, only talking to Quentin.
All the teachers and principals at first want to know who's the new Director-General of Education, because Michael Coates-Trotter has gone to Finance and Administration.
Pam Christie will act in the job for the time being. We'll advertise and get the best possible person to undertake the role of Director-General of Education, New South Wales.
Will it be somebody from within the department? Because it sounds as though with these other changes, Deborah Piccone out of health, Mary Foley into health, Chris Eccles from South Australia into Premier and Cabinet, you've had this in your bottom drawer for a transitional arrangement.
Look, no bottom drawer, but what we've done is ensure that people are in the right jobs. So I think Michael Coates-Trotter, as I've said before, has a future in New South Wales. Finance and services is a big portfolio. It's going to be critical to the state's future. I think he will best do it. That frees up education. And in line with the statements we've made repeatedly over the last 4 years, we'd like to see a search, we'd like to see it advertised, we'd like to ensure that we know who we appoint is the best educational person for the job.
And a genuine meritocracy.
Genuine meritocracy, and next week, Quentin, I'll be making statements around that Public Service Commission that I'm keen to get in place to oversight these in future.
When's your first meeting with the Prime Minister and what's on the agenda?
Well, I've asked the Prime Minister for a meeting. It's up to her to slot me into her schedule, but I want to talk about a range of things. I want to talk about infrastructure, I want to talk about tax, not just the carbon tax, but the tax breakout. There's health and education and national agreements on the agenda. So there's a range of issues there, and I'm confident that post the election, with the dust having settled, that both governments will get back to the business of delivering for the people of this state and for the nation.
You've got a thumping mandate. Any indication that she can bend on that $2.1 billion which is sitting there for Epping to Parramatta, which you want to divert to Northwest?
Well, look, I don't want to engage in this debate through the media, but clearly we went into the election campaign saying that in order to provide savings, we had to defer, not axe, Parramatta to Epping. Our preference, the priority was Southwest, Northwest. That's been backed by others. We've now got a mandate for it, and I'm happy to argue that mandate with the Prime Minister. I understand governments have commitments, but I also understand in this city the biggest benefit is by building those rail links, getting traffic off the M5, the M7, the M2, and freeing up our road system.
You've counted what you call a $4.5 billion black hole in the forward estimates. We'll be in deficit by 2012-13 on latest projections. Is the state now on credit watch, and is the AAA credit rating under threat following the Treasury briefing to you on Monday?
Well, it's not on credit watch. I think the credit agencies have made that point. We certainly were told by the head of Treasury who briefed us that if those figures had been briefed to the rating agencies in New York in December, that he believed that we'd either be downgraded or on credit watch. But the point is that there is no doubt that a $4.5 billion hole does put pressure on the AAA, but we're determined to do two things. We're determined to try and hang on to that AAA because it is important, and secondly, we will deliver on the promises we made during the campaign. That's why we had the pain at the start of the campaign of the $4 billion worth of savings.
The budget's not going to come until September after you've had an audit, but it is fair to say that the AAA is at risk.
Well, it's fair to say that a $4.5 billion black hole puts pressure on maintaining the AAA. We're determined to keep the AAA for all the reasons that Mike Baird has repeatedly said. You
must warn us then that there can be payroll cuts, because 50-60% of the budget of New South Wales is payroll for all our teachers, nurses and police.
Well, we're not in the business of winding back the wages of those who provide those services we rely upon. So what we will do is grow the economy. What we will do is manage the existing finances well. What we will do is stop the sort of infrastructure announcements that sees us wasting $400 million on a Rozelle Metro that now will never be built.
Apart from population growth, Mr Premier, how do you grow the economy in these volatile times?
Well, as we argued during the campaign, our plan to create 100,000 new jobs through payroll tax rebates, yes, it costs up front, but it delivers a bigger than $3 billion boost to the economy. And as I said here a few weeks ago, if we kept pace with Victoria, if we grow our economy, we get millions, if not billions of dollars in additional revenues to provide the services people rely upon.
OK. Do you have a Royal Commissioner in mind for your inquiry into the Roosendale Trader privatisation?
Well, there'll be announcements about that next week. We didn't have a list. We didn't have a bottom drawer list of people to do it. We have had discussions this week, and I'm sure that next week you'll see the announcement.
I noticed that Professor Ross Garno suspects that recent electricity price rises have been inflated to gouge consumers and inflate dividends. it's a serious allegation. Will you task the Electricity Judicial Inquiry to get to the bottom of it?
Well, whether it's the Electricity Judicial Inquiry or whether it's outside that inquiry, it does reflect the concern I've had. I've said in the past that my concern was that having had dividends ripped out of them, having been starved in a sense of resources to invest and grow their system, that the electricity distributors were now gold-plating the infrastructure they were doing, the maintenance they were doing, in case there was a further drought. I want to make sure that what's being invested is appropriate. I want to make sure that what's being invested will deliver reliability, but importantly, I want to make sure that what's being invested isn't going to artificially or unfairly boost power prices, but particularly for people that live in country and western suburbs.
The Independent Pricing and Regulatory Tribunal Act, under Section 16A, it does it does question the independence of this body, because it gives the State Treasury a power to have its cost inputs assessed, costings on dividends, rate of return on assets, ministerial directives. Are there grounds for concern that Mr Roosendahl and the Treasury, who you said you don't trust, may have inflated the prices to sweeten it for the gen trader private operators who've taken it over?
Well, that will certainly be looked at by the Independent Judicial Inquiry, but I have to say, Quentin, did Treasury, did Labor interfere? Yes, by pulling out $8 billion worth of dividends, which is what's caused the problem. We've put in place a dividend policy which will stop that happening, which will see the CEO and directors sign off saying that these dividends will not lead to price increases. I think that's the best way of fixing this in the future. But we do need to ensure that whatever investment occurs, whether it's in electricity, water or elsewhere, is justified, is appropriate and is not going to unfairly push prices up.
Finally, how does it feel to take executive power after all these years?
Well, it was interesting, Quentin, because it wasn't until I stood with the Governor in her office before being signed in. The Governor's office is Henry Park's office. She's furnished it brilliantly, and it wasn't until then, that was Monday at 11 o'clock, well after polls closed at 6 o'clock on the Saturday, that it finally sank in. This week's been interesting. Big challenges, but great opportunities. Great opportunities for people across this state, and opportunities that my colleagues and I are happy to seize.
Mr Premier, good luck to you. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much.